The recharged Texas football team storms into Manhattan and knocks off the number 13 ranked Kansas State Wildcats in a Big 12 conference upset. Number 1 Texas Volleyball gets their easiest victory of the season due to a TCU forfeit, and the Lady Longhorns are ramping up for the NCAA soccer tournament where they're looking for their first postseason win since 2017. All this and more coming up on College Press Box.
Good evening and welcome to College Press Box. I'm your host, Ryan Swantkowski, and he's Carter Yates. We've got a great show for you this evening, so let's get right into it.
It looked like a movie Texas fans have seen far too often on Saturday night when the Longhorns stormed out to a 31-10 first-half lead over Kansas State, only to see that cushion evaporate in the second half. But with the Wildcats driving on the last series of the game, Texas found a way to get it done. Let's take you to Bill Snyder Family Stadium for the highlights. Texas opening drive of the first quarter, and Bijan Robinson uses some great blocking from Ajay Carrick and Cole Hudson to take it 36 yards to the house, but Kansas State answers right back. Quarterback Adrian Martinez fires to Deuce Vaughn for a touchdown. Vaughn finished with 159 all-purpose yards. And now Quinn Ewers wide open to big play. Zay, who has 21 touchdowns in 21 career games. Now, how'd he get that open? We got to check out the replay here. Shake and bake off the line, fake the post, cuts out on the corner route. That is filthy right there. 4th and 1, and Roshan Johnson breaks free. He's got the first. He's looking for more. And a beautiful punch out there from Echo Boy-Doe. He sneaks up behind him. And then after the defense forces the Kansas State turnover on downs themselves, Bijan Robinson takes the pitch, turns on the afterburners. Robinson finished the game with 30 carries for 209 yards. Good chunk of that coming on a 68-yard rush. And now Kansas State looking to steal some points before halftime, and it's picked off by the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Week, Jalen Ford. Texas with a commanding 31-10 lead in the third quarter. Ewers sprints up in the pocket, throws to Xavier Worthy, and he is popped. Senior safety Josh Hayes gives the Wildcats the ball in plus territory. Waning seconds of the third quarter, Martinez makes a man miss in the backfield before firing to Malik Knowles. And it's a fumble, but Texas 109th in the nation with a 37.5% fumble recovery percentage. And on the very next play, Adrian Martinez takes advantage of that, fires it in for a touchdown. He had a pair of TDs on the night. Texas clinging to a 10-point lead here, and Martinez 5 for 12 on the night from third down, and then on fourth down here, scrambling out to his right, directing traffic. He's going to fling it sidearm to Deuce Vaughn, but a couple plays later, big Keandre Coburn bull rushes in the pocket, strips Martinez. The ball gets batted out to no man's land, and this time the Longhorns fall on it. Texas survives and improves to 6-3 on the season. They're in a 5-way tie for second place in the Big 12.
Now, I'm looking to be joined by our football analysts, Joseph Duffey and Will Iger. Thank you for joining us, guys. And Joseph, I'll start with you. When you take in the struggles that Texas have had on the road this year, are you encouraged that Saturday's win can prove beneficial against a tough Horned Frogs team this coming Saturday?
Right, absolutely. Mainly because, just like you said, those second half collapses have been a common theme in road contests this season, but not at DKR. The Longhorns are 3-1 with the only loss coming against then number 1 Alabama. And funny enough, the Longhorns seem to start off slow at home and then finish much better as the game progresses, which is a stark contrast from the road contest this season. However, some familiar areas of concern against K-State need to be addressed. Against this great TCU team, the pass rush must be consistent, but most of all, they need to finish the job because Max Duggan can be dangerous, of course, with his arm, but his strong build allows him to shake off defenders easily, and he is nifty when he uses his legs. Another area of concern is the Texas defense's lack of fumble recoveries. We all know how turnovers can shift momentum in the clutch. However, the Longhorn defense needs to take advantage of loose balls when they're there for the taking. The Hornets defense has forced 10 fumbles this year. However, they've only recorded disappointing 3 times. This problem was shown once more in the closing stages against K-State as Adrian Martinez's loose ball traveled out of bounds, but eventually Keandre Coburn sealed the deal with the Jalen Ford recovery. Those moments in games are just a microcosm, really, of why Texas must be advantageous against a familiar foe this Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. The fumbles recovered for Texas has been a big problem all year. They're forcing them. They're just not getting onto them, but absolutely, Joe. So now, Will, going with you, how was Texas able to survive a second-half comeback from Kansas State, considering they have blown multiple big leads in Big 12 play under head coach Steve Sarkisian?
Well, Ron, during Steve Sarkisian's tenure at Texas, him and the Longhorns have blown many big leads in conference play. While many Longhorns were concerned another brutal loss was coming after Kansas State made a one-possession game in the fourth quarter, Texas was able to fend off Kansas State through stellar outplay by the offensive line and specifically from freshman left tackle Kelvin Banks. Banks and the rest of the Texas offensive line were able to create holes for running backs Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, allowing them to rush for over 270 yards in the day. The offensive line also provided quarterback Quinn Ewers with enough time to make some key throws in crunch time, including an 8-yard pass to the tight end Tavion Sanders, which led to a field goal to go 34-24. While the whole offensive line played phenomenal against Kansas State, Banks' efforts stood out in the crucial road win. Banks, the former 5-star recruit from Humboldt, Texas, did a great job shutting down Kansas State's star defensive end, Felix Enudike-Uzama. Enudike-Uzama did not record a sack and failed to create pressure on Ewers. It was Enudike-Uzama's first home game this season where he failed to record a sack. Banks is also pivotal in the Texas run game. He created multiple gaps on the left side of the line of scrimmage for Bijan Robinson and Roschon. If Texas had similar protection in games last year against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and even in the Texas Tech game this year, those games would have had completely different outcomes and may have ended in Texas wins.
No, absolutely. Banks playing a huge role there, and Uzama, obviously a big-time playmaker in his first home game. So now I want to ask both of you guys together, who are the key players to watch for against the undefeated TCU Horned Frogs who are coming in hot to DKR this weekend? Joe, we'll go with you.
Well, for me, Ryan, it has to be quarterback Max Duggan. Duggan has a career 2-1 record against Texas, winning his first two in the Sam Ehlinger era, of course, and losing last year in the debut of the Sarkisian era. He's no stranger to the Longhorns at all, and he won the last time that he played in Austin under the leadership of TCU pioneer Gary Patterson, who now joins the Texas coaching staff. Duggan also leads the conference with over 2,400 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, and only 2 picks on the season, but TCU has looked a tad shaky against teams at the bottom of the conference these past 2 weeks. So like I said, the Texas defense must take advantage of not just third downs, which they've struggled on all the year, but also containing Max Duggan in the pocket and recovering loose fumbles.
No, absolutely, Joseph. And what about you, Will?
If Quinn Johnson is able to be healthy, I think Texas defensive coordinator Pete Kwiatkowski and the rest of the Longhorns need to pay attention to him. Johnson is TCU's ¡1 wide receiver. He's one of the nation's best wide receivers and is a potential top 10 pick in this year's NFL draft. He's had a great junior year as he's hauled in 650 yards and 4 touchdowns on the season. Johnson at 6'4", 215 pounds could pose huge problems for a Texas secondary that has struggled against wide receivers that have a similar frame as Johnson. For example, Iowa State's Xavier Hutchinson had 10 catches for 154 yards against the Longhorns, and Hutchinson has a very similar play style to Johnson. Look out for Ryan Watts to be matched up with Johnson throughout the game because of his size and physicality. Although Johnson re-injured his ankle in the first half against Texas Tech this Saturday and did not return for the rest of the game, Johnson being out would be a huge loss for TCU. But if able to play, his size and length make him a matchup nightmare for Texas.
Absolutely, I agree with you there. Well, Joseph and Will, thanks so much for that great analysis, and thank you both for joining us tonight. Carter, I'll send it back to you at the desk.
Thank you, Joseph and Will, for that analysis. When we come back to College Press Box, we have our very own James Winkin in the studio to update us on the Texas volleyball team. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to College Press Box. The #1 ranked UT women's volleyball team is on a strong 4-game win streak and are boasting an impressive 17-1 overall record up to this point in the season. Let's now send it over to Carter as he's with our volleyball analyst to break it all down.
I'd like now to welcome in our volleyball analyst, James Winkin. Thank you for joining us tonight, James.
Thank you for having me.
So, unfortunately, last Wednesday's game against TCU was forfeited due to one of TCU's players contracting COVID-19, and this helps Texas secure yet another win, but not necessarily an earned victory. James, although we weren't able to cover the match between TCU, what can you take away from Texas' most recent matchup against Kansas State?
So the matchup between Texas and Kansas State tells me that this Texas team is not holding back. Since Iowa State, they've gone a 3-game winning streak with Kansas State being their most recent victory. They haven't just been able to be squeezing by opponents either. They've been dominating. Against Kansas State, although the sets may have been a little closer than expected with set 1 being 25-23 Texas, they were able to win 3-1. They have been winning in 4 or less sets in the past 3 games. Their highest rating has been their assist rating has been higher and higher. And against K-State, they were 307 to K-State's 152 in hit percentage. Texas has just been holding their ground and shows why they're number one.
And James, this team has a lot of players who do the dirty work throughout these games, and teamwork has been a key factor towards a lot of their wins. But who has been their key player through their 3-game win streak?
I already talked about it. My key player of the game being Logan Eggleston when covering the Texas versus West Virginia game. And since then, she's been dominant. She must be wanted dead or alive by some of these teams, the way she's been racking up kills. In her last game against Kansas State, she has had a total of 17 kills. Also, she's been getting dirty, risking her body with those digs of hers, as she totaled 12 against K-State.
Well, James, with the TCU game forfeited, Texas will be set to play Iowa State this upcoming Wednesday. Iowa State is the only team they've lost to this season, so what must Texas do differently in order to tie the series this season?
In order to secure the win in the bag, Texas must do as they've done in their previous games. The difference between these games and the Iowa State game was the number of errors committed, and there being a stronger sense of teamwork and communication between the stretch from West Virginia to Kansas State. In order to keep their dominance, they need to be clean in errors, and they should be able to secure the victory.
And only 5 more matches for the Longhorns in the regular season before we enter conference and NCAA tournament time. Just a handful more chances to work out those kinks. Well, let's go back to Ryan at the desk. And James, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Carter, and thank you for joining us, James. When we return, we will take a look at the Texas women's soccer team as they get ready to enter the first round of the NCAA tournament. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome back into College Press Box. The Texas soccer team fell to West Virginia in the Big 12 Conference semifinals 1-0, but there's still plenty to be excited about on the soccer pitch. Ryan, take it away.
Thank you for that, Carter. And now I'm lucky to be joined by our women's soccer analyst, Tyler Moss. Thank you for joining us, man.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy you're here as well. And now, Tyler, Texas unfortunately fell short of their goals in the Big 12 tournament after having the best record in the conference. But take us through what you saw from them in the tournament.
Well, like you said, Ryan, Texas ended the regular season with 14 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss. That being to the then-ranked number 1 North Carolina, one of the better teams in the country, and one that I had pegged as a 1 seed for the NCAA tourney. They entered the Big 12 tourney as a 1 seed and faced the 8 seed Kansas State in the quarterfinals, and Texas handled them fairly easily, winning 4-0. What stood out to me was in this game how much more aggressive Texas was in the attacking third. They had twice the amount of shot attempts as well as twice the amount of corner kicks. The only drawback with that was 3 offside penalties as opposed to K-State's none. Now, Texas's goalie played great, and against West Virginia, Texas faced a much tougher challenge. If you look purely at the stat sheet, Texas played a much better game, but the scoreboard did not agree. West Virginia only had 3 shots on goal, but if you manage to slip one in, that's all that matters. Arguably, they scored it right before the halftime, which is one of the worst times to let a goal in from a defensive standpoint. From my experience, it's a mental error that allows that kind of goal to happen. You get to the final minutes of the half, and you're kind of thinking, oh, well, we'll just get to the break. You just let down your guard, and then they were unable to break through West Virginia's defense with 5 shots on goal, and none of them found the back of the net.
Yeah, absolutely. So even though they got bounced in the second round by that West Virginia team, who ultimately went on to win the tournament, we've seen a lot of growth in standout players on this Texas team. Who are some of those players for you?
Well, the first one for me is Trinity Byers. The sophomore forward has been the key force in driving this offense. She has 16 goals on the season and 32 shots on goal from 60 total shots. That is an absurd 53% shot on goal rate, and half of those shots in the goal have ended in a score. The bottom line is if you get Byers the ball and she's got an open look at the net, there's a solid chance she'll be celebrating afterwards. Although she's not a selfish player either, also having 9 assists, which is an incredible display of awareness and maturity on offense, not just being captivated by taking shots, but assessing and looking for better scoring opportunities. And her partner in crime on that offense is Alexi Missimo, the sophomore midfielder. Mr. Mo has the ability to control and manage the game unlike any other player on this roster from that midfield position. She's opened up so many scoring opportunities for this team, leading the way with 14 assists this season, and while missing a lot of time through much of October. If Texas wants to make some wave in the NCAA tournament this year, they're going to need this duo to show up big time.
Yeah, absolutely. Texas has a lot of great players, but those two especially are very key to them, especially moving forward. And speaking of the NCAA tournament, the big news on Monday was the release of the bracket for this year. Take us through Texas's potential path to the title.
Well, that loss to West Virginia in the conference tourney definitely hurt their seeding, as I had them at a 4, maybe a 3 with dominant performances in the Big 12. But that loss and losing the automatic bid, the NCAA gave them a 7 seed, and they pitted the state of Texas against itself. That's right, the Texas Longhorns will be hosting the Texas A&M Aggies on Friday, November 11th in the round of 64. That 7-10 matchup is always a tough game, and facing such a big rival school like A&M will definitely amp up this first round matchup. And even with the win there, they'll most likely have to face the number 2 seed Duke Blue Devils for a chance at the Sweet 16. It's a tough slate for them early, but if they can set the tone early in these games and run this game through their offense, it's definitely doable.
Wow, Tyler, thank you so much for that. The Longhorns playing the Aggies off the bat. That's a rivalry as old as time, man. Excited to see that. So thank you for that great insight and for being here tonight. With that, I'll send it back to Carter at the desk.
Thank you for that, Tyler. When we return, we recap the last week in Texas sports. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome back into College Press Box. The Longhorns take on the unbeaten Horned Frogs in Austin at DKR this weekend, and the College Game Day crew is coming with them. This is now the second time ESPN's College Game Day will take place in Austin this year, the first being Alabama, and the first time ever that the Game Day crew will have 2 shows in the ATX in one season.
Texas men's and women's basketball tip off their inaugural seasons at the newly built Moody Center this week. The men faced off against UTEP on Monday and Houston Baptist on Thursday, while the Lady Longhorns host Louisiana on Friday.
Number 2, men's swimming and diving competes against number 9 Virginia and wins with a score of 104-75. The team faced off this past weekend and won by a score of 104-75. The Horns started off the meet by winning the 400 medley relay and swim it in just under 3 minutes and 6 seconds. That is the fastest time in the NCAA this year. The Horns moved to 5-0 on the season.
The number 3 ranked women's swimming and diving team beat the best team in the nation, the Virginia Cavaliers, on Saturday, 95-91. The Longhorns are now 4-0 on the season.
Now let's take a look ahead at this week in Longhorn sports. This Wednesday, we have Texas volleyball against Iowa State at 7 p.m. on Longhorn Network. Thursday, we have men's basketball taking on Houston Christian on Longhorn Network yet again at 8 p.m. On Friday, women's basketball takes on Louisiana at 7 p.m. on Longhorn Network. And on Saturday, we have Texas volleyball taking on the Sooners at 6 p.m. on ESPN, plus in a Red River Showdown, and Texas football going up against the TCU Horned Frogs at 6:30 p.m. on ABC.
That'll wrap things up for this week's episode of College Press Box. Make sure to tune into our other shows this week, including College Crossfire on Wednesday and the 1-0 Sports Show on Friday. Thank you to our analysts, everyone in Master Control, and our executive producer, Samantha Pearl, and everyone else at TSTV. I'm Carter Yates. He's Ryan Swantkowski. Thank you for joining us, and have a good night.